This is Tech and Ed Tech, brought to you by Magic Ed Tech. In this podcast, we discuss technology that powers ed tech and helps improve learning for all. I'm your host, Dan Gizzi, Vice President of Global Accounts, and today with us we have Kalyan Nathan, Chief Information Officer from Encyclopedia Britannica. Welcome, Kalyan.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. How have you been?
Yeah, things have been good. Last 1 year has been crazy for everyone, so it's not been much different. But some of us have to be, again, right, really appreciative of the fact that we've been fortunate and we've had the ability to work from home. That flexibility has definitely helped to manage the local situation at home, kids at doing schooling from home. So having that flexibility has been great without losing much productivity. So yeah, can't complain much. I
That's
hope you and
great.
your family are safe and doing well.
We're doing well. Thank you for asking. So I would definitely say that it has been many challenges beyond just our world changing on a dime in ed tech, that's for sure. But I think
That's true.
the one thing I think we've found though is it's helped us all to see what really matters in life, and we've definitely been able to connect much more in a way that I think we would have without having spent so much time together in lockdown.
That's true. Definitely getting into office, right? It feels like it was overrated. People can still do their job from wherever they are as much as possible. So I
Exactly.
think not having to have 2 hours of commute every morning and evening, I think that has helped big time.
Very true. So, one of the things, Kellyanne, that I noticed in your profile is that you had an interesting career prior to getting into the ed tech space and the education space. I would love to hear just a little bit about your journey and understand what drove you to land at Encyclopedia Britannica.
Sure. So my journey started again, right? I started working with mainframes, something that a lot of the millennials won't even understand what it is. So working in the financial industry, working for Merrill Lynch, and then eventually I moved on to working for the hospitality industry. I spent a good 13 plus years there, working as a consultant and then full time at Starwood Hotels and then Marriott. So it was an interesting journey, right? Starting from converting Starwood Hotels from their mainframe systems into the then update again the new reservation system that they built using at that point largest service oriented architecture implementation at that point. So working on those projects and then a couple of other transformational projects, and then leading the M&A for two of the largest integration of two of the largest hospitality companies, Marriott and Starwood. So it was a fun ride. But then eventually, as I was working on those projects, I got an opportunity to work at Encyclopedia Britannica, and just the opportunity to work for a company that's been for so long and has been it's an iconic brand, and so I couldn't pass on that opportunity. So in my current role, right, I get the opportunity to integrate technology teams across the globe, consolidate and stabilize infrastructure, focus on innovation, and ensure on security, right, which is key in our area of educational technology, especially you're dealing with a lot of kids. So that is paramount. So this was an exciting role. I couldn't pass on it. So I'm happy to be here. And I'm really happy to be, again, right, my job, I feel that I'm making a difference in the life of young learners on an everyday basis. So that keeps me going.
That's an amazing journey. It's always interesting to hear how someone may start out in one avenue in front of a computer, maybe the size of the room we're probably both sitting in separately, but to understand where you are today in your journey is great. So obviously Encyclopedia Britannica is just a small little company that's been around for, I don't know, maybe what, 250 years?
True. So, yeah, the Britannica group, right, comprises of Encyclopedia Britannica, Merriam-Webster, Melingo, Britannica Knowledge Systems, and Britannica Digital Learning. And these are multiple brands that we have under our portfolio, and which is a good mix of iconic brands like Merriam-Webster and Encyclopedia Britannica, and also modern brands like Morphic Schools. So it's a good place to be, right? Having that ability to work in a company that is constantly evolving. So that is one of the keys here. And again, as you said, right, Encyclopedia Britannica has been around for 250 years. And the interesting thing is, right, when Encyclopedia Britannica, the first books were published, the first paragraph on the book basically said utility ought to be the principal intention of every publication. Whenever this intention does not plainly appear, neither the book nor their authors have the smallest claim to approbation of mankind. If you look at it, again, they were very clear on what they want to do. And the interesting thing here is it's about the information, it's not about the medium in which you're going to be sharing the information. So, and working in a company like this, that's again, right, starting from print to now being all digital. Again, Encyclopedia Britannica Group, right, touches over 150 million students every year, or in over 120 countries, 20 plus languages. And we are together one of the top five consumer reference sites in the world. So our brand priority is to help you save time, learn more, and be sure. And we achieve that by being able to adapt to new ways of delivering content. Again, be it social, be it search, video, voice, IoT. So being available to where people need us to be in.
That's great. I'm old enough to remember when they would show up and sell you on the print bound version of it with the wonderful leather covers. So it's great to hear how the transitions happened over all of these years to being a digital implementation of everything. I guess what's very interesting, I guess, from the perspective, I think, of the audience that may be listening to this, what are some of the areas you would say the company has transitioned into that they may not necessarily know that is Encyclopedia Britannica or one of the brands?
That's true. So one of the things our aim is, right, as I mentioned earlier, is not only to provide relevant information, but the information should be medium agnostic, right? It should be available to people in the way they want to consume the information. So for us, again, right, it's key for us to provide vetted information that not only provides you a quick answer, but also provide context around understanding the topic better. So we want to provide you a framework by which you learn better, and it's transformational both inside and outside the classroom. And technology plays a key role into it. So for a company, right, to survive 250 years plus, you can't just stay still. You need to keep evolving as things go by. From starting to having printing a new, again, right, a new version every 10 years to, again, as print technology improved, right, we started publishing more regular updates. But
Right.
then right now, we are all digital right now. We have not been publishing the encyclopedia for a while. So you have to be constantly evolving with technology. And one thing again, right, as you said, all those volumes of book on the shelf, but we were the first company to launch the digital encyclopedia. And we did that 4 years before Microsoft did.
That's great to
So,
hear. What medium was that on?
so it was on discs, right? Initially, we were selling it, sending drives. And one interesting thing there is not too many people knew how to use CD-ROMs then. So
Right.
we actually had to package them with VHS tapes and send it over so that people could know how to use
And this is and here we are today, 20 years later, recording to a cloud.
it. That's true. Again, right? Technology changes how information is delivered, and we also always need to be looking to what's coming in the future, right? You just can't stay still and say, "I have things, and this will help me take me 20 years, 50 years." That doesn't happen anymore.
Mhm. Well, I think what's kind of interesting, as we saw with the pandemic and we saw with the overnight change in how delivery of technology was expected and ultimately required for learners to learn in the last year, what would you say would be some of the areas that you had seen or have come up that have been challenges that you think you may have had to face, or even just in general in the industry?
Again, right, before I get into the challenges part of it, right, the pandemic changed lives everywhere, but then there was always a positive side to it, right? I would want to just focus on that before dwelling on the challenges, if you don't mind.
Of course, please, the positivity is always welcome.
So again, and as COVID has proved that learning can happen anyway, not just in schools, right? As you look at the digital world is full of opportunities, and as you said, there are a lot of pitfalls. But then what happened was when suddenly schools were all closed and people, again, right, everything was shut down. Because of technology, we had the opportunity to continue education for our kids from home. Imagine if this pandemic had happened 20 years ago. I don't think we could have done what we did today, right? And we would have wasted full year of school for kids, and that would be again, right, what I would call the pandemic generation right now, because again, that would be loss of learning, loss of, again, right, it would have had a cascading impact in the future economy and the future generation. So with technology, I think right now we were able to continue schooling. It may not be the most optimal thing, but I think we got to a place where we've realized we can learn anywhere, anytime. And even in the future, right, as we are looking at it, think of the benefits, right? If somebody is sick, right now you can't send them to school, but that same kid can now continue their education on those sick days from home, right? So, and then you can plan family vacations around it. So it gives people a lot of flexibility. And we have proved that we have the technology backbone available for this to continue.
This
So
is
as
very
I'm
true.
looking at, sorry. So as I'm looking at the problem areas, right, one thing, this is very, again, right, this analysis that I'm sharing is limited to the last 1 year. The access to technology, right, it's not been consistent. That is one of the huge problems I see. There's a big, significant issue with access to technology in rural areas or low, again, right, in some of the lower socioeconomic neighborhoods. So a lot of kids, right, don't have reliable internet. And it's not just an issue in developing or underdeveloped nations, right? Even places in parts of US or other developed countries, we have significant issues with internet. So this creates a situation where the imbalance between students that have access to technology and devices and the ones that don't, the imbalance widens. And to me, this can cause a very significant impact long term. And again, for example, I have a family member of mine in India who is a teacher.
Hmm.
He's a math professor, and he's been teaching this, working with this not-for-profit organization there, teaching underprivileged kids. And what they did was they gave access cellular data for these kids in Mumbai for them to attend classes. These kids don't have access to internet. So as this person was teaching them, he realized that some of these kids would randomly not show up for classes. And when he started inquiring, he realized that there were three kids in that household. And this guy would attend classes only if his sisters don't have classes at the same time. There was no way three kids in a household could attend classes at the same time. So even though there are people ready to help them and giving them access, again, it's not at a point where it is available for everyone. So that's going to have a big impact long term.
Yeah, it's very interesting to think about that because when we think of infrastructure of what is required and necessary, we think of water, we think of, access to food and medical. But, now that we have digitally connected the world almost overnight in a way that required it to teach an entire population. It became an infrastructure problem very quickly that had not been addressed in, not as you mentioned, not even just in countries like India or around the world, but in our own backyard. I'm based in South Florida, and we deal with it here. Where there may be multiple people trying to access the same virtual classroom, and the teacher is on what should be a good enough connection, and it doesn't work well enough for them.
It's true. And that's also interesting, right? Times are changing. So when you look at the new infrastructure bill that they're trying to pass, broadband is one of the things. It's not just bridges or roads
Hmm.
anymore. Broadband is part of that. So people are realizing that digital infrastructure is as critical as physical infrastructure.
Very true. On top of that, also the actual skill set of the users. Are they proficient enough on the technology? We can look at the K-12 generation, and they have always had some form of digital in their life. But when we think about the educators, they may not always necessarily have had this as a medium for themselves that they're
That's true.
struggling with as well to learn.
That's true. That's another important thing, right? It's like a lot of teachers that are great teachers in schools. It doesn't translate to when you come online, right? So what happened with this whole pandemic is, as you mentioned, it just everything turned on a dime. Overnight, everyone had to go to online learning and online teaching. And a lot of these teachers, right, they were not prepared and they weren't trained enough to be effective. So one thing that we also have to invest on as we do these, right, is to train our teachers to be more proficient with online tutoring. There are a lot of great teachers that I know would do really well in person training, but that always does not translate automatically to online learning.
It's very true. As you were experiencing this at EB, when everything was shifting overnight, were there some areas as a company that you looked at and said, we can help impact this in a positive
Sure.
way?
So as we were looking at it, right, one thing is when this whole pandemic started and schools were forced to go online with no notice, there was chaos because the first day, right, I still remember when my 8-year-old then had to go into school, and the first 2 days, the teacher was just trying to figure out how to get the kids on the classroom,
Hmm.
how to deal with like 20 kids in a Zoom session. It was not fun. But then once they went past those problems, they had a tough time for content that they could use for online learning. So what at EB, right, we realized this was an issue. So we started working with our schools. So what we did was we have this product called Launchpacks, which is our science and social studies classroom platform that's created to support the needs of teacher, student, and classroom with dynamic and flexible resources. So what we said was we were going to give this product free for all the students, people that wanted to. So over 2,000 schools across the US signed up for this, and then they started using this in their classroom for science and social study classes. But then, as we were working through the onboarding and everything and started tracking the data usage, which is critical in this whole platform, we realized that a lot of students, right, did not have access to internet to access the platform once they get again, right, because a lot of them did not have proper devices, internet. So what we did was we had to immediately look at other ways of providing this content, and so we started working on partnerships, right? This is not a problem that something can some people can solve on their own or companies. So we worked with HP, where we provided print capability for the content on launchbacks, and then with the capability, right, people that did not students that did not have access to internet, schools were able to print the content to them and give it to them. So it's critical as we go through all these problems, right, to look at the data that comes out of this and then figure out how can we tweak things to make things better. And
It's great to hear that, knowing that partnerships were able to develop in a way that we're not competing with each other, but helping the final outcome of teaching.
that's true. And the other thing is, right, from a technology point of view, the key thing was infrastructure here, right? We had to scale up fast and quick. So what we also did on our infrastructure point of view, as things were getting heating up, we fast tracked migrating some of our applications to the cloud as a key priority. And by doing that, we were able to create a stable platform as we had more students and teachers starting to use some of these products. We were able to expand and be again create a stable platform for our users. And when I talk about migrating to the cloud, right, it's just not about taking something you have on prem, lift and shift it. That does not help. The cloud, again, right, you need to upgrade your application to make sure that it's able to take the advantages of the features that's available on the cloud. For example, right, you need to make sure your applications, you're investing on the CI/CD platform, because things like that, right, will not only help you reduce the time to market, but it'll also help improve productivity of all the teams around. So as we are getting into this whole mode of more people learning online, it's just not the product alone that we need to focus on. We also need to focus on the infrastructure that it runs on and make sure that we are building something that's scalable, reliable, and available at all times.
Well, that's great to hear that scalability and really, if nothing else, be able to set up for success in the future. So as we start to think about what the future of ed tech is now that we've had this massive digital transformation in an area that has traditionally lagged behind many other sectors, what would you say that you and your teams are preparing for the future of what the classroom environment and hybrid environments will look like?
Okay. So as we're looking at it, one thing I want to do is make sure we use this pandemic as a learning to go again, right? We have got a lot of awareness of what's lacking right now, but that alone is not enough, right? We need to take action on it and make sure there's an impact that comes out of it. So my hope is that as again, right, things start getting back to normalcy, knock on wood, soon,
Hmm.
we are going to probably go back to in-person school this fall. And then once that happens, right, I don't think we should just go back to the old ways of doing things. We need to know what worked during this remote learning, right, and start integrating those in our classroom sessions every day. Right. For example, I may say that there are a lot of kids that are very shy about asking questions or raising their hands. But then, right now, I see when I'm sitting with my daughter, and sometimes when I look at what's happening at school, a lot of kids they're fine sending text messages to again in the chat room to teachers. Right? They may not be comfortable raising their hands and asking questions, but then they are more comfortable in a way that they can say, "Okay, I can type to my teacher." So how can we start integrating things like these, right? And just not go back to the old way of doing things, right? And as we are looking at it, other way will also, again, right, we'll have to look at from an edtech industry, information is information, right? And starting from having books to using Google to, again, right, the way we access this information has been changing. The consuming the information has been changing. And for all you know, 20 years or 10 years down the line, there may be a chip in our body that may be used to again right that would be the source of information consumption for people. You never know. So what we have been doing is investing a lot into artificial intelligence and machine learning research so that we could help surface our huge content repository to users in a meaningful way, and so that that can help them achieve their goals. The other key aspect as I'm looking at technology in edtech is personalization. Right, education cannot be a one size fit all solution anymore. We have to be constantly looking at opportunities where we can personalize the content and assessment based on student skills. So for example, right, if I look at assessment, I may again, right, some of the data that we can start collecting with all these online learning and online assessment, there could be a scenario where the teacher sees that 50% of the class got a certain concept wrong in an assessment. So the teacher can go back and focus on those. Or take an example, right? I may have scored 100% in my math exam, but then as the teacher is looking at my results, let's say that I spent 12 minutes answering a question, figuring out an answer. I may have got the right answer, but the way I might have solved it may not be the most efficient thing. So if you're just doing this on a pen and paper and submitting it, the teacher wouldn't know how much time I spent on a certain question. Here, the teacher is armed with that information, saying that, oh, Kalyan's got this right, but he probably didn't do the right way. He spent too much time on it. How can I help him improve on that specific concept? So, by doing this right, I think this would help students learn at their own pace without facing peer pressure. And it will also help the teachers to identify areas that the student needs to focus on. Again, right, and these advancements would help students go from just focusing on getting a grade and a certification to improving their skills and experience that would prepare them for the future.
Those are some great points, to think about how artificial intelligence, the AI, machine language learning, the ML learning of this is going to change the world for the better. I think some people might be a little concerned with putting chips with the information into our cells. I'm sure there's a whole other podcast we could have on that, Kelly.
Right. We may be surprising ourselves. It may not be 10 years down the line. It may be 5 years down the line.
I think you may have watched too many Terminator movies, but I'm on board if learning is done by a microchip, or if we could figure out how to feed ourselves through that too as well.
That would be fun.
It would. So our last question as we wrap up. So as a leader in the industry, in the ed tech industry, what would be your advice that you would have for your peers and your customers of your lasting thoughts to this?
Okay, so one thing is right. Today's education, as we look at it, right, it's very extrinsic. We just look at a curriculum, we teach kids. But then what learning is different from education. Learning is driven by curiosity and it's an intrinsic motivation. So edtech companies, right, as we look at it, we'll have to look at how we can look at new trends and constantly innovate. And again, right, if you look at it, most of the jobs that our elementary school kids that would be working on in 15, 20 years, those jobs don't exist today. They're going to be a new set of jobs that these kids need to be prepared for, and we don't know what those jobs are today. So again, a lot of the repetitive jobs are going to be automated. So what we need to do is EdTech plays a key role in ensuring we prepare our kids and provide them a path going from education to employment to economic independence. So that is key. And the teachers, parents, and EdTech teams, EdTech companies play a big role in this. And we got to take this seriously, right? It's and make sure that we make a difference in the next generation that's coming. And this is a huge responsibility for everybody in this field.
Kalyan, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Tech and in Tech, brought to you by Magic EdTech. I hope you have a great day, and I thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you having me on the show, and you have a great day too. Thank you.
You as well. Thank you.